Imagine a world where a silent, invisible killer sweeps through your town, claiming lives in days, sometimes hours. No one knows why, and no one knows how to stop it. This wasn't a nightmare. It was the reality of the Black Death, a plague that wiped out up to 50% of Europe's population in the 14th century. But amidst the horror, some survived. How? What desperate, often surprising strategies did people employ to cheat death during humanity's darkest hour? Join us as we journey back to the medieval world to understand the Black Death, not just as a historical event, but as a profound lesson in resilience and public health.
To understand survival, we first need to grasp the enemy. The Black Death, or the Great Mortality, was primarily caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, carried by fleas living on rats. These infected fleas would then jump to humans, infecting them. Originating likely in Central Asia, it spread rapidly along trade routes, reaching Europe by the mid-14th century. The medieval understanding of disease transmission was practically non-existent. They had no concept of bacteria or vectors. They simply saw people falling ill and dying with terrifying speed, leading to widespread panic and confusion.
The symptoms were horrific and unmistakable. Victims would develop painful, swollen lymph nodes called buboes, typically in the armpits, groin, or neck, hence the name bubonic plague. These could be as large as an apple. High fever, chills, vomiting, diarrhea, and excruciating pain followed. Death usually occurred within 2 to 7 days of infection. The sheer speed and lethality overwhelmed communities. Entire villages were decimated, fields lay fallow, and societal structures crumbled under the weight of mass death and fear. The psychological toll was immense, leaving survivors traumatized and a generation scarred.
Without scientific understanding, people desperately sought explanations. The most prevalent theory was miasma, or bad air, believed to carry disease. This led to practices like burning aromatic herbs or carrying posies of flowers. Others saw it as divine punishment for sins, leading to religious fervor, penitent processions, and even the rise of flagellants who publicly whipped themselves. Astrologers blamed planetary alignments, while some tragically scapegoated minority groups, leading to horrific persecutions. These theories, while understandable given the context, largely steered people away from effective solutions.
Medieval medicine was largely powerless. Physicians, few and far between, resorted to practices like bloodletting, believing it would remove bad humors. Purging with laxatives, applying poultices made of herbs and even dried toad to buboes, or drinking strange concoctions were common. While some herbal remedies might have offered minor symptomatic relief, none could combat the Yersinia pestis bacterium. Many cures were more dangerous than helpful, and the best a physician could often offer was comfort or a quick, if misguided, diagnosis.
Despite the lack of scientific understanding, some communities stumbled upon effective strategies through observation. The concept of quarantine emerged. Cities like Venice, a major trading hub, pioneered lazarettos, isolation hospitals on islands where arriving ships and potentially infected individuals were held for 40 days, or quarantina. While the why wasn't clear, the what, separating the sick from the healthy, proved crucial. This early form of social distancing, though not universally applied, was one of the few truly effective measures against the spread. Personal hygiene in the Middle Ages was very different from today. Regular bathing was not common,
and understanding of germ theory was centuries away. However, some practices, even if for reasons other than germ prevention, might have offered minor protection. People might wash hands before meals or after handling certain items, largely for ritualistic or aesthetic reasons. Avoiding contact with the visibly sick, wearing protective clothing, though rudimentary, and burning clothes of the deceased were observed. Cleanliness, even if not understood scientifically, was instinctively linked to avoiding illness by some.
Nutrition during the plague was a complex issue. For the wealthy, a varied diet might have supported a stronger immune system, but even they faced disruptions to food supply. For the poor, scarcity was a constant threat, and the plague exacerbated this, leading to famine in some areas. Folk remedies included consuming strong-smelling foods like garlic and onions, believed to ward off miasma, or vinegar, which was thought to purify. While these offered no direct cure, a well-nourished body generally stands a better chance against any illness. Access to clean water was also a critical, yet often overlooked factor.
One of the most effective, albeit privileged, survival strategies was simply to flee. Those with means, the wealthy, nobles, and clergy, often left plague-ridden cities for their country estates. As the famous author Boccaccio documented in the Decameron, a group of young people retreated to a secluded villa to escape the Florentine plague. This physical distancing from infected populations undoubtedly increased their chances of survival. However, this also meant that the poor, who couldn't leave, bore the brunt of the disease, and sometimes fleeing individuals inadvertently carried the plague to new, uninfected areas. In an era without scientific answers, superstition and fervent religious belief offered solace, and for some, a perceived path to survival. People wore amulets, carried charms, and performed elaborate rituals to ward off evil spirits or divine wrath. Churches were packed, prayers were constant, and pilgrimages were undertaken. While these actions had no medical efficacy, they provided psychological comfort and a sense of agency in a terrifying, uncontrollable situation. For many, faith was their only hope, and communities often rallied around religious leaders, finding strength in collective prayer.
Beyond individual actions, communities grappled with the plague's challenges. Burial practices became overwhelmed, leading to mass graves and desperate measures to dispose of bodies, which sometimes exacerbated the problem. Some cities attempted rudimentary public health measures, like cleaning streets or regulating markets, though these were often inconsistent and poorly understood. Orders were issued to prevent the entry of travelers from infected areas, a precursor to modern border controls. These fledgling efforts, while often reactive, laid some groundwork for future public health systems.
Perhaps the most iconic, if often misunderstood, figures of the plague were the plague doctors. They were often municipal employees, sometimes not even fully trained physicians, hired to treat plague victims, record deaths, and perform autopsies. Their famous beak masks, stuffed with aromatic herbs, were believed to filter out the bad air, while their long coats and gloves offered some physical barrier. Their medical interventions were largely ineffective, but their presence, however grim, represented a desperate attempt to combat the disease and care for the afflicted, often at great personal risk. While the immediate impact was devastating, the Black Death profoundly reshaped European society for centuries. The massive population loss led to severe labor shortages, empowering surviving peasants and workers who could demand higher wages and better conditions. This contributed to the decline of feudalism. There was a questioning of traditional authorities, both religious and secular, and a shift in worldview that some historians argue paved